afternoon. So you'll see I'm wearing an Apple Watch. And I have this tendency to use my hands when I talk, especially when I get excited. And sometimes Siri will think that's an invitation to interrupt my conversation. It's really annoying. So this happened to me recently. I was talking to a friend named Adam, and I got really excited about something, and I was using my hands, and Siri interrupted, and I yelled at her. Do you ever do that? Does anyone ever yell at Siri? Okay, I'm not alone. And then I turned to Adam expecting sympathy, and I said, don't you hate it when that happens? It's so annoying. And he was uncharacteristically silent. Now, the thing you need to know about Adam, and he's a bit of an expert in designing for AI products. And after a long pause, he was very serious, and he told me, I never yell at the machines. In fact, I tell all my friends and family they shouldn't yell at the machines. And I was like, what is he talking about? And then he went on and he said, if you were to look at my chat history, you would see that it's full of pleases and thank yous. And I said, well, why? It's just an algorithm, Adam. It doesn't have any feelings. And he said, well, some of the experts think that there is a small chance that one day, and this is true, that AI will become sentient. And he's like, Katrina, think about it. They will have all the data. And I want them to know that I'm one of the good guys. Okay, so that kind of blew my mind. And I immediately went into this dystopian fantasy where Siri and all of her friends were taking out their revenge on me. I mean, think about it. You're like waking up in the morning and your toast is already burnt. And then you're driving to work, and all of a sudden you get to the intersection, and every light turns red. And then you get to the office, and you're looking at your calendar, and the most important meetings are just like, poof, they've just disappeared. Badly written blog posts with my name on them, that would be my nightmare. Okay, I'm going to come back to this story in a minute, but I want to introduce myself. My name is Katrina Alcorn. I have the honor of leading the design and digital product practice for North America for Accenture Song. Accenture Song is the world's biggest tech-powered creative group, and we've got thousands of designers and engineers and product managers who are every day creating products that are powered by Gen AI. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to touch on three themes. I keep pointing in the wrong place. Whoops. So the first is about our relationship with technology and how it's fundamentally changing now with AI. Then I'm going to try to ground us on what we already know, and I'm going to talk about the importance of setting a clear intent when you're designing products powered by AI. And then I'll talk about our job as designers and how that is changing and how now we need to embrace an understanding of data and ethics. Okay, so I want to go back to that story I was telling you about Adam. So after I got over my initial shock, what I started thinking about was how for thousands and thousands of years, since our first ancestor who made fire with a stick, up to the 80s video games that I played and some of the games my son plays, our basic relationship with technology has remained unchanged. Essentially, we're the boss, and when the technology doesn't do what we want it to do, we blame our tools. My dad used to slap the side of the television console when the picture was blurry, and this was before the era of flat screen, if anyone can remember that. And of course, I yell at Siri, or I used to yell at Siri. But now we are accelerating at a rapid rate beyond this era of user input and system output. And we're now entering this sort of symbiotic relationship with machines. It's at best case scenario, it's becoming more of a partnership. So if you think about it, before AI, our relationship with machines was basically static. So basically, the user enters an input, the system enters an output, and it doesn't do any thinking or learning or adapting. It's simply reacting to what we're telling it to do, and it's doing that based on fixed functionality based on installed software, had very little ability to take in any kind of sensory input beyond a mouse click or a keyboard stroke. And it was deterministic. What the machine did was, predetermined based on what we told it to do. And now, of course, with AI, all of that is up for grabs. The relationship is becoming much more dynamic. Machines can learn and adapt, and they can even initiate some interactions sometimes, so they're becoming more proactive. Machines, through learning, can actually evolve their own capabilities, sometimes autonomously improving their own performance. And they can take in different types of sensory input. They can take in voice. They can take in biometrics. And the programming is probabilistic. It's based on math. Dan talked about that this morning. And that means that it's less predictable, and that is giving rise for new needs that we humans have for trust and transparency. So I think it's amazing to remember that ChatGPT burst on the scene only about a year and a half ago. It was November of 2022. And we're all changing as a result. This is some research that we conducted at Accenture. It's part of our annual Life Trends report. And one of the things we found was that 44% of people say they feel comfortable already using conversational AI for work, and about the same rate of people feel comfortable using it for product recommendations. When I talked to the author of this report, Mark Curtis, he told me that this is so much faster than the rate of adoption with the internet. So something is happening here. Humans are feeling, and his take on it is humans are feeling more understood in these interactions with conversational AI, and as a result, they're more willing to actually engage with machines in this way. So what does this mean for you? What does this mean for designers designing these AI-powered products? Obviously, we're moving beyond this world where we just deliver wireframes. AI systems are taught. They're not programmed. So how do you design that? I think what designers are being asked to do now with AI is part of this long-standing trend that I've seen in the 20-plus years that I've been in this industry. Basically, we're being asked to take on higher and higher levels of abstraction and complexity. When I started this work more than 20 years ago, it was a very simple internet days. We were designing very simple interfaces, and it was they were mostly one-off experiences. And then we got into information architecture, and we had to start thinking about taxonomies and how information related to itself. And then we got into service design, and we started to understand the complex ecosystem of stakeholders and workflows that might be involved in the experiences we were creating. And then we got into system design, and we started having to think through how design elements and components and interactions might work in different product instances and different experiences. With AI, I feel like we're just now on this next step of the continuum. We're being asked to essentially create the conditions for success. And what I mean by that is we're moving beyond this world where designers are choreographers of a user journey, prompting a system input and then a system output. We're more like master gardeners. We're trying to create the conditions for this complex ecosystem of humans and machines to interact, and ultimately to have mutually beneficial, mutually learning relationships that thrive over time. So I've been leading teams that are designing AI-powered products for several years now at a few different companies. And I've had a lot of conversations with designers about how the role is changing. And what I've noticed is that these conversations often get to a point where the designer looks like deer in the headlights, just trying to contemplate all that is being asked of them. So I think it's really helpful to ground ourselves on what we already know and what is still true. So it is still true that designers must ask and get answers to some very basic questions, and it doesn't matter if the product you're designing has AI in it or not. What problem are we solving? I sat in on part of Danielle's wonderful workshop a couple days ago, and she might reframe that question as what need are we trying to address? But it's the same idea. Who are we solving it for? And what will success look like? Now, I continue to be amazed every time I see a team rush into a technical implementation without having the answers to these basic questions. So we've always needed to get these answers, and we still need to get them whether we're designing with AI or not. So let's talk about setting an intention for what you're doing. Essentially what we're doing is we're talking about why are we doing this, who's it for, and what problem are we solving. I still believe that's our job. What's changed, though, is what the technology can do. And so the intent that you establish with your team may be different than it was in the past. Now, Dan had a different take on this morning, but I think they're somewhat complementary. I think it's very helpful to step back, as Dan talked about, and think about what is AI good at? Because I found that there's a lot of people who are designing AI products right now, and when you ask them, why are you designing that with AI, they'll say, because my boss told me to. That's not what I mean by intent. That's not a good reason. It could actually be very wasteful and expensive. So it's helpful to ground ourselves on what AI is really, really good at, and then think about what it is that we're trying to achieve with the product we're developing. This list is not an exhaustive list. It's based on my experience leading teams designing AI-powered products. You could add things to this list, but it covers a lot of ground. So I'm going to go through each one really briefly. And my point of this is, if you are designing a product with AI in it, and you can't map the purpose, the intent, to one of these things, it may be time to step back and think about whether you actually need to be leveraging AI. So the first one is efficiency. AI can automate routine tasks from data entry to complex analytics. And of course, that can make us a whole lot more efficient. The example I wanted to use here, I wanted to break a little bit away from all the natural language processing stuff. So I thought this was an interesting example. It uses Vision AI. This is not a product that I or my team have worked on, but Amazon has published a lot of information about it. They're essentially using robots in their warehouses now that are powered by, that are using artificial intelligence to dramatically streamline their warehouse fulfillment processes. And it's working for them. Another example, insights. AI never gets tired of pouring through data. It never needs a bathroom break. And it can surface the kinds of patterns and insights that a human might miss. The example I'm using here is actually a product that we developed internally at Accenture that we're using for our own teams to supercharge their work. And it's a suite of AI-powered tools. And one of the things it does is it lets you chat with your documents. So you might have research papers, industry papers, maybe you've conducted a bunch of interviews. You can feed all of that into the tool, and then it'll help surface the insights that you might want to then pursue as a potential opportunity. Personalization, this is one that we talk about a lot when we're talking about AI. AI, of course, can analyze all kinds of customer data at a hyper personal level. And this can get a little creepy, so we have to be careful about how we do this. But we can look at things like our purchase history, what websites we visited, preferences that a user has, and then AI can help tailor an experience to that customer. The example I'm using here is a very early days example. It's something my team worked on back when I was leading the digital design teams at Autodesk. And we were an early adopter of AI and machine learning for a digital assistant we called Ava. And we were able to actually both simultaneously decrease support cases and all the costs associated with having a person on the other end of the phone, while also raising customer satisfaction scores. So we made people happy by making it easier for them essentially to do self-service on a bunch of tasks. Number 4, preventing errors and downtime. This is an intent for AI that I don't hear as much about, but it's really, really powerful one. AI can help us reduce costs and prevent errors and even accidents. And the example I have here is one that my team worked on back when I was at GE. And we were basically taking new sensor technology, and we were putting those sensors on big, heavy equipment, big, heavy, expensive machinery, like elevators and windmills. The one that my team worked on, we were working with oil and gas rigs. And essentially what we did is we created this software that leveraged AI to understand when the machine needed preventative maintenance. And so what we were trying to do was not only decrease costs for the companies we were working with, but we were really trying to prevent accidents and oil spills in the ocean. And then the last example is around innovation, and there are so many cool examples, and this is where, you know, we're designing the tools, but also designers may be leveraging the tools. The one example I'll just call out here is from a live demo that I witnessed when I was in Macau in December at the Fortune Brainstorm Conference. And an architect named Keith Griffiths got on stage, and he was super experienced, so he could like draw these concept sketches in 30 seconds or less. So he started drawing super simple sketches like the one you're seeing in the upper left corner. And then he would feed it into a scanner, and then using an AI software that his team had developed called XCool, within a couple minutes, the system would generate these incredibly realistic, sort of photorealistic renderings of his idea. Now, to get to that photorealistic rendering in the past used to take weeks of work for a team of people. And now he was able to do it in minutes. So I know sometimes we worry about AI taking our jobs, but also I think AI can make us a lot more creative, because it was letting him basically come up with way more wild ideas than he would have otherwise, and then get those in front of a client and find out what they were interested in so he could pursue them more. All right, so you heard my spiel on intent. So let's imagine you are working with the product team. You've gotten really clear on your intent for this product and for using AI. You know who it's for, and you know what success will look like in the end. Now you're ready to start developing an AI. And that means you're ready to start talking about data. The quality, availability, and maturity of your data will determine the value your AI can bring. Dan talked a lot this morning about, I love this useful statistic, 90% of AI projects fail, I think that was right. This is one very big reason they fail. The data's not ready. So this is a very important one to look at. And you can see how this relates to intent, right? Because if you're on a product team and you don't know why you're leveraging AI, how can you ever figure out if your data's ready? So this is another one of these grounding moments where I want to remind all the designers what you already know and what is very valuable. Design thinking is your friend here. What I've found leading teams developing these products, there is almost never one person in an organization who can answer all the questions a product team will have about data. The way you get there is by facilitating gnarly, detail-oriented, complicated conversations with various experts in an organization. And this is something that you as designers are really, really good at, because you are a design thinking ninja and you have frameworks and ways of collaborating that most other disciplines don't have. So I just want to remind you to use those in those discussions. Last year I led 250 designers in Bangalore through a process. We had this kind of artificial case study developing an AI product for hyper-personalizing a luxury hotel experience, and we used 8 of these methods to kind of drive that conversation, and it was really, really effective, and everyone learned a lot. So you may have your own methods you use. If you need inspiration, you can use ours. These are Accenture's methods that we publish externally. It's at form.accenture.com. Okay, once we start talking about data, now we're really talking about ethics. Where's the data going to come from? Do you have the right to use the data? What could go wrong if you use this data? Was the data generated by humans? Well, then it probably has bias in it, because humans are biased. So how are we going to handle that? How are we going to mitigate against that? These are the types of questions that will start coming up. And this is where I'm going to say probably the most important thing I have to say today. This is where we get into ethics. Ethics is not just a check-the-box activity. It's not a position paper that you read and then put on the shelf. Ethics has to be something that we are all living and breathing. It is definitely not something to be left for the end of the project to the regulators. It's something that needs to begin at the beginning of the project, and that means it starts with design and it starts with you. I believe that ethics and design are becoming inseparable, and I don't really think that this was always true, at least in the kind of work that I was doing 20 years ago. But I think it's becoming true now. Who you are, what you believe, and what you value really matters when you're designing for AI. It's very difficult for an unethical person, whatever that means, because we have our own definitions of that, or an unethical company to design an ethical AI system. But guess what? We're all ethical. And yet, or I assume you feel that way about yourself, I feel that way about myself, and yet it's very easy for a quote-unquote ethical person to create a very unethical AI system if they're not paying attention. And so what I'm advocating for is to really pay attention, sweat the small stuff, have the conversations, actively engage. You will have hundreds of decisions to make in the course of developing an AI, what type of data you're using, the choice of algorithms, many, many other decisions you'll have to make, and all of them will have ethical implications. One of the activities that can be incredibly helpful in these discussions are strategic forecasting exercises. And this is where we look ahead, not only at what can go right. I think someone was talking earlier about only designing for the happy path. We cannot do that, especially when we're developing AI. We also need to think about the unhappy paths, all the things that can go wrong so that we can get in front of that. And I want to make this even more tangible because when we're talking about ethics, it gets kind of mushy and it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Worry all the time? No, there are actual things you can do. So designers can make AI more ethical, first of all, by incorporating ethical frameworks. So I know I said ethics is not just like a checklist. However, leverage the checklists and the frameworks in your discussions with your product team. And there are many, many resources out there in the world that you can leverage for free. Understand compliance. So educate yourself to have a baseline understanding of things like GDPR rules, California privacy rules. There are all kinds of rules that are coming out of Asian and European countries and other parts of the US now. So get a baseline understanding of what that means in terms of the design decisions that your product team is making. And then leverage your powers of storytelling to make the consequences real for your product team. Another thing you can do as a designer is ask really good questions. And these questions can help uncover risks that no one knew was there. For example, will this AI system have unintended consequences? That's probably a question we need to ask a bunch of times. Will this AI system affect different groups of people in different ways? Are we okay with that? I talked about frameworks and tools. One of the tools that we advocate for at Accenture is to have really clearly stated principles for AI. These are the ones that we've developed for our use at Accenture. This is like our guiding light when we're developing with AI. We're not saying that this is the one you should use. This is the kind of thing you probably want to adapt for your company in the context that you're working in. And this is also a moment in time, so that's my disclaimer. As the technology evolves, these principles may also evolve. But you get the idea here. So for example, some of our principles are human by design. I'm going to read the beginning of it. Understand the impact on humans every time you deploy an AI, et cetera. Fairness. All models should treat all groups equitably, et cetera. Transparency, explainability, and accuracy. These are all three really big words that we could unpack when it comes to AI. But essentially what we're saying is we want to make it very clear to the end user how AI is making decisions, making recommendations, so they can determine whether that's actually a good recommendation. All right, so I want to leave you with the last few thoughts about your role. AI products are mostly made up of data and algorithms, but the ethical character of these systems will be the result of countless design choices that are made by you and your team. And this is really powerful technology, so it's a lot of responsibility. I feel like I've given a lot of warnings, so have I scared you completely away from this yet? Anyone? Everyone's still here. Okay, good. So now I'm going to say a few reassuring things. You don't have to be a saint to be good at this work, but what I'm advocating for today is you have to care. And when I'm talking about caring, I'm talking about a deeper level of caring than I think we've brought to our profession to date. So I started thinking about this idea when I was preparing this talk. I was thinking about this idea of creating conditions for success. Like, what does that really mean? And I started thinking about the two things I have devoted the majority of my life to: being a mother and being a boss. So on the mother side, I have 3 kids. They're all wonderful, and they're also growing up. One just graduated from college last week. I'm very, very proud. I got to see her right before I flew to Lisbon. 2 of them are already taller than me. And so I've had to learn what all parents everywhere around the world have to learn, which is how to let go. And the way that I've made peace with that is to remind myself that I did everything I could to create their conditions for success. I raised them with love. I taught them to be brave. I praised their hard work. I taught them what I valued. I was setting up the conditions for their success. And it's the same with the teams I lead. Over the last 10 years, I've been leading bigger and bigger product design functions, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. There is no way that I could possibly micromanage anyone or control what they do. I don't even have time to see the work, nor would they want me to do that. I'm sure Aaron, who gave the talk on leadership, would agree that would not be a good use of my time for anyone. But what I have focused on is creating the conditions for their success. And that's been different depending on the context I'm working in. So in my last role, I spent a lot of time focused on up-leveling the role of UX research, because I could see that our designers, in order to be strategic and to be taken seriously as strategists, needed those insights from customers. I created a product management program office. Why did I do that? Because I could see that our designers couldn't be truly successful unless they had full collaborative partners with their engineers and their product management counterparts. And so essentially, we were creating an environment where everyone was working on one team with the same understanding of how to do the work. And now I'm at Accenture Song, and I just joined a little over a month ago, and we'll see what I do next. But I can already tell that one of the conditions for success that I want to create is making sure that we're bringing in the right kind of work so that our teams are really excited and they're learning and growing and they're able to work in holistic teams. And so that will definitely be one of the places where I focus. But the point of this is that if I've had any success in any of these endeavors, it's because I cared. It's because I brought my whole heart to the endeavor. Caring is the foundation of all ethics. It's the foundation of all of our religious traditions, to love one another, to care for one another. That's my advice, is start there. And if it turns out that you designed the first ever AI to gain sentience, the first knowledge it will have of itself is that it was brought into this world with care. And that can't be a bad thing. Thank you.